I believe Tolkien's point with Boromir was not so much that he was the bad man and Aragorn was the good man, but that the Lord of the Rings Motion Picture Trilogy, though one of the greatest cinematic achievements in its own right, still made several decisions in adapting J.R.R. Tolkien's three-part epic to the big screen. The first film is a fairly close adaptation of the first book, The Fellowship of the Ring, published in 1954. The major changes start with sequences that were cut entirely. The book spends a lot of time in the Shire during Bilbo's birthday celebration, Frodo preparing to leave, which doesn't happen until 19 years after Bilbo's departure, and getting out of the Shire when the Nazgul are just arriving. This even included an entire scene where the hobbits stay with Farmer Maggot and learn more about the Black Riders. Perhaps the most infamous sequence cut from the first half of the book is when the hobbits meet Tom Bombadil in the Old Forest. In the book, this is one of those scenes where the characters gather information, we find out more about the world and the One Ring, and the power levels of the supernatural characters. Since Tom Bombadil doesn't come up anymore in the books after this section, I can understand why they decided to cut him out of the films entirely, and having the scene in there would have slowed the film down way too much. But it looks like audiences will get to see just a little bit of Tom Bombadil in the upcoming season of Rings of Power. The only other major things that were cut were two big exposition scenes, and understandably so. The first is when Gandalf comes back to Bag End to tell Frodo about the One Ring, and in the book he explains the making of the Rings of Power, the War of the Elves and Sauron, and what happened between Bilbo and Gollum. In the movie, what we need to know of these details is explained either in the film's prologue sequence or in Gandalf talking in different scenes throughout the rest of the movie. The second big talking scene in the book is the Council of Elrond. This chapter is full of lore details from different characters and would not have translated well to film at all. In the movie, they decided to go with just the dialogue that centered on the ring itself. The dialogue that Gandalf has in the book about his meeting with Saruman the White is shown earlier in the film a few different times, and they kept these in because Saruman not only becomes an active villain by the end of this film, but a full villain in the next film. The movie does keep most of the scenes from the book, but it still made some major changes to a few of them. The first one is the introduction of Arwen Evenstar, who is the daughter of Lord Elrond of Rivendell and the eventual wife of Aragorn. In the movie, she is sent by her father to rescue Frodo and bring him back to Rivendell while the Nazgul are chasing them. In the book, this is done by a character named Glorfindel, an elf warrior who in times past fought the Witch King of Angmar and even made him retreat. The prophecy that is mentioned by Gandalf in the third movie, that no man can kill the Witch King, was first uttered by Glorfindel himself. This was changed for two reasons. One, they were trying to set up Arwen and Aragorn's relationship now so they could expand upon it in the next two films. And two, they didn't have time to explain Glorfindel's importance to the larger world of Middle-earth, only for him not to have any involvement in the story after the Rivendell sequence. The second next big sequence change was having the end of the Emon Hen attack in this film. In the book, we follow Frodo and Sam as they leave the rest of the Fellowship, and we don't figure out what has happened to Boromir until the beginning of The Two Towers, which is the next book. I think this was smart because they wanted to have a definite ending for this film despite how sad it would be. Speaking of Boromir, it's time for the last section of this video, the changes to the characters. Boromir is depicted in the movie as being the weaker man, the almost antithesis to Aragorn, who always resists the ring. In the book, Boromir is portrayed as having a lot of good qualities. He's the valiant and proud warrior who also has a sense of humor. He's closer to the archetypal knight than Aragorn, at least at first. I believe Tolkien's point with Boromir was not so much that he was the bad man and Aragorn was the good man, but that Boromir was the best a man could be and still falls to the power of the ring. The only part in the book where Boromir gets all fierce and creepy was at the very end, and Sean Bean did a fantastic job at portraying the character in this scene. The movie did what it did to make the differences between Aragorn and Boromir clearer, but for the sake of adaptation, I think they overdid it. Lady Galadriel fits into this bucket as well, but not as much. In the movies, especially with the Lothlorien scene in this film, the filmmakers went with the bewitching side of the character, which is definitely there in the book. Galadriel is an elf, but she's a very old elf, and she has great powers of perception and insight into the minds of others. Book Galadriel is almost supposed to be that wise old woman, the grandmotherly type character, who has been through a lot. The filmmakers, I think, went with the creepier side of the character so they could show what happens if a very powerful character takes the One Ring for themselves, to be almost the show for the tell of what we saw earlier between Gandalf and Frodo. Because of the book's straightforward narrative and following one set of characters the whole time, the movie is a great adaptation of Tolkien's novel. It captures and builds this massive world of characters and places slowly instead of dumping it on us all at once. The filmmakers made some clever changes that ended up being better for the movie and the trilogy. The only issues that are present are how they overdid Boromir and, to a lesser degree, Galadriel. The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring gets an adaptation score of 9 out of 10. Hello everyone, welcome back to Movies with Michael. If you enjoyed this adaptation video, you can show it by leaving a like on this video and comment down below what things do you think I missed. I understand that I couldn't get to everything in this video, but tell me what you thought the filmmakers did right and wrong when adapting this book to the big screen. And please remember to subscribe to this channel and click the notification icon to be notified about my latest videos. That's all for now, and I'll see you all next time.